Hello, everyone. You ever look at Canada and think, oh yeah, just America's polite upstairs neighbor with maple syrup and moose? Well, think again. This country is full of surprises, like a real-life prison for polar bears, a national apology law, and a town that technically belongs to the United States, but you have to drive through Canada to get to it. Oh, and while selling flowers is legal, buying them could land you in serious trouble. Spoiler, we're not talking roses here. From legal weed to frozen hair contests and the world's longest demilitarized border, Canada's got some seriously strange stuff going on behind all that politeness. Curious yet? Buckle up, because we're diving into the weirdest facts and laws you'll only find north of the border. Let's kick things off with a question that's crossed more than a few minds. Ever wondered, why doesn't the United States just take over Canada? Well, here's the thing. Why invade your best friend when you already control their wallet? Canada and the United States are like peanut butter and jelly. Different flavors, but stuck together for life. They share the world's longest undefended border, pipelines, power grids, and yes, even Walmart. Canada's only got about 95,000 active soldiers, but they're trained, disciplined, and with Mother Nature on their side, they don't even need missiles. They'll freeze you out without firing a single shot. Want to enter Canada? From the south, you'll have to get past the United States military, a global superpower packing more gear than a sci-fi blockbuster. From the north, better bring an ice pick. You'll be facing Arctic waters that kill in minutes, snowdrifts tall enough to bury your house, and bone-snapping temperatures as low as 58 degrees. Even your eyelashes will surrender. So why hasn't the United States just taken over Canada? Believe it or not, they tried. Twice. Back in 1812, the United States tried to expand northward, eyeing Canada's massive resources, especially their fresh water. But the invasion flopped, with American forces getting pushed back in key battles like the Battle of Queenston Heights. Fast forward through World Wars I and II, and suddenly the two countries became not just neighbors but close allies, fighting side by side in NATO and military operations worldwide. Today, instead of war, the United States and Canada chose the besties with benefits strategy. Economically speaking, over 75% of Canada's exports go straight to the United States. It's like dating someone who pays your rent and still thanks you for dinner. And speaking of besties with benefits, welcome to the world's friendliest border where neighbors don't build walls, they share libraries. The Canada-United States border holds the record for the longest undefended border in the world, stretching a jaw-dropping 5,525 miles. No military guards, no barbed wire. Just forests, lakes, and the occasional moose minding its own business. It's so chill, they even gave it a nickname, the 49th parallel, because much of it follows the 49th line of latitude across the globe. But don't let the straight line fool you. This border has some seriously weird and wonderful surprises. Take the little town of Derbyline, Vermont. On one side, you're in the United States, cross the street. Boom. Stansted, Quebec, Canada. But here's where it gets cool. There's a library, yes, a real functioning library, built right on the border. The Haskell Free Library and Opera House is an architectural peace treaty, with the entrance in the United States, but most of the books and the stage in Canada. There's even a black line on the floor to show where the international border cuts through the building. You could literally check out a book in one country and read it in another, without ever leaving your seat. But this friendly border is just the beginning. Step into Canada, and you'll find yourself in a land so massive, yet so empty, it feels like Mother Nature got carried away with the map and forgot to invite people. Canada is the second largest country on the planet, right after Russia. But here's the kicker. It's got a population of just 37 million. That's barely 11% of the United States population living in a space nearly as big as the entire continent. What does that mean? Well, over 80% of Canada's land is basically wilderness forests, mountains, lakes, and more moose than you can count. In fact, there are whole towns with fewer than 100 people. So if you're planning on a road trip, don't be surprised if your GPS says, next service station, 300 miles. Good luck! Canada's Apology Act, where sorry is so common, they had to regulate it. Canadians are known for being polite, almost too polite. Sorry in Canada is like In the United States. It just slips out, constantly. You bump into a Canadian, they say sorry. You step on their foot, yep, still sorry. It's so baked into Canadian culture that in 2009, the province of Ontario had to pass an actual law, the Apology Act, because people were saying sorry so much that courts didn't know what to do with it. Judges were like, wait, did that guy just admit guilt? So the law made it clear. In legal situations, sorry doesn't mean I'm guilty. It just means I feel bad this happened. You know, being Canadian. Only in Canada can empathy come with legal protection. So the next time you visit Canada and someone says sorry for absolutely no reason, don't be confused. Just smile, nod, and say, sorry. It's the Canadian way. The truth about homelessness everywhere. Behind the scenic beauty and the sorry for everything culture, there's a side of Canada you probably didn't see on the travel brochure. Despite having a pretty impressive GDP per capita, over $55,000 USD a year, Canada is home to as many as 300,000 homeless people. And no, that's not a typo. In cities like Toronto, it's not unusual to see entire tent cities set up right downtown, like some kind of sad camping festival that never ends. Why? Let's start with housing prices that'll make your wallet cry. Renting a one-bedroom apartment in Toronto can cost over $1,750 USD a month, and that's if you're lucky enough to land one. The rental market is so competitive, landlords ask for things like credit scores, rental history, personality bios, even your life skills. It's basically a job interview just to get a roof over your head. One college student, Chen, literally flew nearly 1,000 kilometers round trip every week just to attend class, because flying back and forth was cheaper than paying rent in Vancouver. His flights cost him around $890 USD a month, while rent would have been over $2,500 USD. Let that sink in. It was cheaper to fly than to rent a room. Another reason is that about 50% of the homeless population here struggles with addiction. As for why so many are dealing with addiction, I'll explain that in the next part below. And here's something darker. Dying is expensive in Canada, like shockingly expensive. In Ontario, a standard burial plot costs around $2,000 USD, but in major cities that can skyrocket to $65,000 USD or more. No wonder the number of unclaimed bodies has shot up, over 100 in 2023 alone, just in Ontario. Families simply can't afford to bury their loved ones. In fact, over 10,000 Canadians had to launch online fundraisers in 2023 just to cover funeral costs. So yeah, Canada has snow and kindness and pretty lakes, but it also has hard truths, wild contrasts, and stories that'll break your heart. Churchill, Canada, the only town with a jail. For polar bears, welcome to Churchill, Manitoba, one of the most remote, frozen, and flat-out wild towns in all of Canada. Perched on the southern edge of Hudson Bay, it's about 620 miles north of Winnipeg. Translation? You can't just swing by Churchill. You either fly in or ride a slow-moving train through endless tundra. There's no road, and not much population either, unless you count the polar bears. Oh yes? Churchill isn't known as the polar bear capital of the world for nothing. Every fall, up to 10,000 polar bears pass through the area during their hunting season migration. Now imagine living in a place where stepping outside for groceries could land you in a standoff with a 200-pound apex predator who thinks your recycling bin smells like dinner. To survive here, locals follow an unspoken rule. Always look both ways. Not for cars, but for bears. Spot a bear? You don't panic. You call the bear patrol. Yep, that's a real thing. These folks show up in trucks, scare off the bear with noise cannons or rubber bullets. If the bear's too stubborn or too curious, they sedate it and send it to jail. No joke. Churchill runs a full-on polar bear jail. It's set up inside a decommissioned military aircraft hangar, retrofitted into what might be the world's coldest and furriest correctional facility. Inside, there are 28 cells, each about 12 by 16 feet, cold, dark, and very minimal, just how polar bears like it. What's on the menu during their stay? Nothing. Well, snow and water. That's it. Why? Because scientists found that feeding them only encourages repeat offenses. And since polar bears can naturally go weeks without eating, this diet doesn't hurt them. But it sure sends a message: town's off limits. After about 30 days of chill time, they're released back into the wild via helicopter. tagged, tracked, and watched. But here's the kicker. If they come back, they go right back to bear jail with extra time for bad behavior. So yeah, in Churchill, even the polar bears have rap sheets. Now, here's a contest you didn't know you needed in your life. The International Hair Freezing Contest. Yep, you heard that right. Every February, in the frozen heart of Canada's Yukon at Takini Hot Springs, brave and slightly bonkers contestants take part in what might be the wildest beauty pageant on Earth. Here's how it works. Step 1. Dunk your head into 40-degree hot spring water and soak that hair until it's dripping. Step 2. Sit above the water and wait. While the steam rises, the air outside hits you with a brutal 30 C. Within minutes, your wet hair starts to freeze, twist, curl, spike, basically sculpting itself into some kind of frosty masterpiece. Eyebrows, frozen. Eyelashes, crispy. Once your hair looks like it lost a bet with a snowstorm, you strike a pose and snap a photo. That icy selfie gets handed over to contest officials for judging. Then, and this is crucial, you immediately dip your head back into the hot spring before your icicle lashes start chipping off. Winners are chosen based on creativity, commitment to the cold, and just how ridiculously awesome their frozen hairstyle is. The categories? Best Male, Best Female, Best Group, Most Creative, People's Choice Award. And the prize? The top winner gets 750 Canadian dollars, about $550 USD, plus 30 free hot spring passes. Not bad for looking like Elsa during a bad hair day. Second place gets about $145 and 12 soaks. Third place? A humble $75 and 3 hot spring dips. Because hey, you earned at least a warm bath for all that suffering. So if you've ever wanted to turn your head into a frozen sculpture for fame, glory, and spa vouchers, Canada's waiting. Canada and cannabis, the high road or a slippery slope. In 2018, Canada lit up the headlines, literally. It became the first G7 country to fully legalize cannabis nationwide. Adults 18 and over can carry up to 30 grams, share it, and even grow up to 4 plants at home. For many, it was a bold move toward progress. For others, a giant puff of trouble. So why did they do it? Prime Minister Justin Trudeau argued that prohibition wasn't working. Teens were still getting weed, and drug dealers were still cashing in. Legalization, he believed, would take control away from criminals and put strict regulations in place. Kind of like saying, if it's going to happen anyway, let's make it safer. And yes, there were benefits. Billions in tax revenue. A booming cannabis industry that created jobs, fewer arrests for possession. But here's the twist. Studies since 2018 have shown a rise in cannabis-related hospital visits, especially among youth. Some provinces have seen increased impaired driving incidents, and mental health experts warn about the risks of long-term use, particularly in developing brains. Even law enforcement admits, just because it's legal doesn't mean it's not causing new problems. Some Canadian parents are asking, did we just trade one problem for another? So is Canada a trailblazer or a test case? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure. When you mix bold policy, big business, and billions in tax dollars, you better hope your country's high doesn't come with a hard crash. Canada, where selling the service is legal, but buying it could land you in jail. In most countries, buying or selling adult services is simply illegal, no questions asked. But Canada? Canada took a different path. Here, selling is legal. You can advertise it, promote it, even register it as a business, under certain conditions, of course. That means sex workers aren't treated as criminals. They're recognized as part of the entertainment industry. But since 2014, buying those services, that's illegal. Yep, you can legally offer it, but if someone actually buys it, they're breaking the law. Penalties for buyers range from 18 months to 5 years behind bars, depending on the case. Why? Canada's goal was to flip the narrative. Sex workers are seen as victims, people who deserve protection from exploitation, not punishment. But not everyone's convinced. Critics argue this so-called Nordic model creates a legal paradox. You're allowed to sell, but customers aren't allowed to buy. Which sounds less like regulation and more like an awkward stand-up joke. Some say this law actually makes things more dangerous. Since buyers fear arrest, business gets pushed underground. Less visible, less safe. And enforcement? Spotty at best. Some places crack down hard, others barely enforce it. Sex workers are left uncertain about their rights. It's messy. Welcome to Canada, where laws can be polite, but perplexing. Point Roberts, the American town stuck in Canada. Imagine living in an American town that's completely cut off from America. Welcome to Point Roberts, a tiny spot with 1,300 residents, part of Washington state, but only reachable by crossing through Canada. Yep, it's basically an American island inside Canada. So how did this happen? Blame it on the 1818 Treaty, when the United States and Britain tried to solve a messy border dispute by drawing a clean line across the 49th parallel. Sounds simple, right? Just slice the map in half and call it a day. Except, they didn't notice Point Roberts sticking out below that imaginary line, a tiny nub of land hanging off Canada like a geographic afterthought. And by the time anyone realized it was cut off from the rest of the United States, too late. A border's a border, even if it makes zero sense. But here's the wild part. Canadians love this place. Why? Because gas is cheaper, which costs a third of what they do in Canada. Groceries are cheaper. And you can get a rare in Canada treat, an undercooked medium rare burger, which is actually banned in Vancouver due to food safety laws. So yes, people cross a border just to taste pink in the middle beef. And crime, basically non-existent. Thanks to strict border checks on every road in and out, Point Roberts is 3 times safer than the average United States town. It's the kind of place where you can leave your doors unlocked because there's literally nowhere to run. All because 2 centuries ago, someone drew a straight line and forgot to zoom in. Canada, where the coastline never ends. Think you've seen a long road trip? Canada laughs in your face. This northern giant boasts the longest coastline on the planet, a jaw-dropping 151,000 miles if you count every nook, cranny, island, and icy inlet. To put that in perspective, you could wrap Canada's coastline around the Earth nearly 6 times. For comparison, Indonesia, the runner-up, has only about 33,000 miles of coast. Now imagine this. If you tried to walk Canada's entire coastline, no breaks, no sleep, just marching 24/7 like a GPS on caffeine, it'd take you over 4.5 years to finish. So yeah, if you ever get lost in Canada, odds are you'll hit the coast before you find Wi-Fi. And if someone says they're going on a coastal walk in Canada, just hand them a backpack, some trail mix, and maybe a calendar that goes up to 2030. An ice hotel like no other. Every winter in Canada, a magical hotel rises from 500 tons of ice and 30,000 tons of snow, built fresh from scratch. Welcome to Hotel de Glace, the world's coolest hotel, open for just a few frozen months. Inside, it's not just ice walls and snow floors. Each year, the entire design is reimagined. New ice sculptures, themed suites, glowing ice bars, and even an ice chapel for frosty fairy tale weddings. No 2 winters look the same. There's a slide made of ice, a cocktail bar with glasses carved from ice. And if you're really bold, you can say "I do" in a wedding chapel that melts by spring. Then when the season ends, the whole thing vanishes, melting back into the landscape like a dream. Only to be born again, brand new, next winter. Sleeping at Hotel de Glace? Sure, it's freezing, around 5 degrees, but with thick reindeer skins and thermal sleeping bags, you'll be cozy enough to actually get some sleep in this icy wonderland. Maple, the tree that runs through Canada's veins. In Canada, the maple tree isn't just a tree, it's a national soul. You'll find it on the national flag, on military uniforms, even carved into hockey trophies. It's like the bald eagle for Americans, but with better snacks. The wood from maple trees is lightweight and tough, perfect for everything from baseball bats to high-end furniture to musical instruments. But the real magic? It's in the sap. That golden sticky treasure we call maple syrup isn't just a breakfast topping up north. It's a national symbol, a seasonal ritual, and a multi-million-dollar industry. And it all started with Canada's Indigenous peoples, who were the first to discover how to tap the trees and boil the sap into syrup. No tech, no machines, just knowledge, patience, and fire. Every spring, when the nights are still cold but the days start to warm, maple trees wake up. The sap begins to flow, clear, light, and just a little sweet. As the season rolls on toward winter, the syrup gets darker, richer, and more intense, just like good stories. Today, Canada produces over 70% of the world's maple syrup, exporting more than $620 million USD worth in 2022 alone. And guess who loves it the most? Americans. About 2/3 of Canada's syrup exports end up right here in the United States, while the rest makes its sticky way to places like Japan, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom. It's not just a tree, it's the taste of Canada. Weird laws in Canada. That'll make you raise an eyebrow. Want to hear something weird about Canada? Besides the maple syrup, polite folks, and stunning nature, they've got some truly bizarre laws. Women in Ontario can legally go topless in public. Yep, you read that right. Back in 1991, a woman named Gwen Jacob was arrested in Guelph, Ontario for walking shirtless on a hot day. After a long legal battle, the court ruled that going topless wasn't indecent. Since 1996, women in Ontario have the legal right to go topless in public, just like men. That said, it's still socially controversial in many places. Round baby walkers are totally banned. Canada became the first country in the world to ban round baby walkers in 2004. Why? They were found to delay motor development and cause injuries, especially from stairway falls. If you sell, advertise, or even import a baby walker, you could face fines of up to $100,000. Climbing trees in Toronto is illegal. Thinking of reliving your childhood by climbing a tree in a public park? Not in Toronto. Climbing trees on public property is against city bylaws. The reasoning? It could damage trees or lead to injuries. A man was once fined $365 for climbing a tree in Bellevue Park. Ouch, that's an expensive branch. Thinking of building a snowman? Great! But in Souris, Prince Edward Island, make sure Frosty isn't taller than 30 inches on a corner lot. And he better look friendly. Anything too threatening could land you in trouble with bylaw enforcement. Because in Canada, even your snowman needs good vibes. CanCon, keeping it Canadian on the airwaves. To promote Canadian artists, radio stations are required to ensure that at least 35% of the popular music they broadcast each week is Canadian content. This initiative, known as CanCon, helps support local talent and keeps Canada's cultural identity strong. So yeah, Canada isn't just maple syrup and mousse. It's polite, powerful, a little quirky, and honestly, kind of perfect. Next time you hear a sorry, just smile. You're in one of the coolest and coldest countries on Earth. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next awesome adventure.